only feel for danger.
Hang on to that hand line.
This is completely total black. You know, there's nothing there at all.
Moving along the wall again. Checking for suction. No suction anywhere as of yet.
Later, the underwater investigator finds everything is safe.
Okay, let's come back downriver now. Let's shoot downriver.
Roger, coming downriver. Take the slack up, slow and easy. Easy does it.
I'm going to get back up. Now, here you can see where the water is actually seeping through the pavement just a few feet from the flood wall. But, like we say, the Corps of Engineers says everything is safe. They're going to monitor this situation, and believe it or not, the city is not going to come out here and fix this anytime soon. They don't want to mess around with it. Right now, they're just going to monitor it, see how it goes throughout the day and the next couple of days. But right now, problems like these, they really have to keep a close eye on in case they get any bigger. Dick and Mandy?
Okay, Rochelle, thank you.
Well, the other problem on the flood wall is up in North St. Louis. The river cut a tunnel under the wall last week, and construction crews will work through the night to fill the gap before it causes any more problems. First, they'll use a drill that they hoisted into place this morning. Workers will then drill through the footing of the wall and pump in concrete to fill up the hole gouged out by the river. If they don't succeed, nearby businesses are on the line, but they tell us they are confident.
We have a lot of people who are regular customers who are calling and they're concerned and they're saying, is everything okay down here? And all I can tell them is everything's fine. Come on down.
Once the concrete is pumped into the hole, it should harden and stabilize that section of the flood wall.
Well, even with the gouges and the leaks, they'd probably give anything to have a flood wall like that in Greene County, Illinois. A massive effort is underway there at this hour to build a levee big enough to stop the river. Floodwatch 93 takes us to Eldred now, and the 2 News team's Bruce Gordon.
Dick, I am in Eldred, Illinois, where National Guardsmen and volunteers from all over this area are battling Mother Nature and time tonight. For the moment, Illinois river levels are down by a few inches, but over the next several days, the floodwaters will be back, trying once again to topple the system of levees that protects these farmers' livelihoods. If a picture is indeed worth 1,000 words, this is it. Backed up by the swollen Mississippi, the Illinois River threatens to overflow the levee system, protecting 10,000 acres of corn and soybeans, the best crop around here in years. Each day, volunteers risk their safety to carry sandbags to levee trouble spots by boat. Joe Simpson runs a business in nearby Carrollton. He shut it down for a week to help the farmers fight their fight.
The old country boys hangs right in there. We're going to whip her one way or the other.
So far, the levees are holding, but they are spongy, weak, full of sand boils. Still, the volunteers carry on. How much do you stand to lose?
Oh, about 950 acres of corn and soybeans.
They safe at the moment?
So far, with the help of a lot of good people. A lot of them we don't even know their faces, don't know who they are. But
some of them are National Guardsmen sent here to help strangers because that's their job. Others have friends and family here. They know what's at stake. Susan Allen runs sandbags and volunteers out to the repair sites. As she passes the fertile farmland, Susan explains that for farmers, this might just as well be an expensive factory or retail store.
That's what they do for a living. If it all goes under, then they have no living.
This is their business.
That's right.
Now, folks here in Eldred say they deeply appreciate the help they've received, but they desperately need
routing traffic. Emergency crews work to stabilize the tank as gas sprayed from it. The tank is now empty, and crews are pulling it from the water. Almost 200 homes and businesses are already underwater in Jefferson City. The fast-rising Missouri River spared little in Boonville, Missouri, just west of Columbia. More than 60 homes are underwater, and the news isn't any better for the downtown business district. The major routes to New Franklin and Glasgow are now closed down. The river should rise another 2 feet there in the next few days.
Well, hundreds pay their final respect.
Bridge when a runaway propane tank slammed into a grove of trees in the Jeff City neighborhood of Cedar City. The tank sprang a leak, forcing police to evacuate the few people surveying their waterlogged homes in this flooded section of town just east of the Capitol. But late word is that the tank has been stabilized and the danger of explosion minimized.
Getting there can be an adventure.
Our expressway, our main east and west traffic flow has been interrupted, and they're having to detour in different areas, as well as the north-south route.
With detours, making the half-hour trip north to Columbia will now take 3 times that long. Meantime, homeowners along the river get to watch and worry as the rising river drenches their basements and hopes.
We sandbagged the whole side. They had volunteers all day Saturday, but it didn't do no good all the way around. It's, it's about 5 foot.
Even though the propane tank has been stabilized at this hour, Highway 54 East remains shut down. Water from the rising Missouri is up over part of the road.
Larry, now.
Situation around the Midwest, we continue to monitor.
Arnold, and 37 feet in St. Charles, and the dates haven't changed at all. Here in St. Louis, the river will crest along about next Tuesday. Again, that's the bad news. The good news is that there's no rain here, there's nothing on radar, and there's nothing expected anywhere across the Midwest for at least the next 3 to 5 days. That's the good news. We'll have more on that coming up in just a few moments.
He immediately called an apartment finder service. Unfortunately, like many flood victims, he acted on impulse. He thought he'd lost his money until he called Contact 2. When the River Des Peres flooded out his whole neighborhood, Jim Weisbrod paid $69 to HomeX Services to help him find a place to live. Turns out he found his own home.
I didn't expect to find a place that quickly on our own. Well, when I went to them, they wouldn't refund the original because they said I had to wait 60 days.
Consumer watchdogs say the big problem right now is that many flood victims are in such a hurry to find a new place to stay, they're not reading the contracts carefully from some of these apartment finder services.
Be there as this soggy city awaits yet another river crest. Folks continue cleaning up from the last one. They want to know how they can return to some semblance of normalcy. Tonight, at Alton's federal courthouse, Bill Sherwood should have some answers for them.
Most of these people are going to be interested in what federal monies are going to be available to help them in terms of loans, grants, or other money available to help them rebuild and clean up.
Sherwood will be joined by other lawyers and representatives of FEMA and the Small Business Administration. Small business woman Betty Nairn will be there with an important question about the downtown restaurant she owns.
I have a lease, and I wanted to know if my rent is still due, because I have no income coming in at all and haven't since July 16th, so I want to know, where I stand legally with my rent.
If you can't make the forum, you can still obtain...
Watch and give what you can to the Flood Relief Fight Telethon.
They really shouldn't work more than 6 straight hours because this sun is intense during the day, much worse than they think it is.
But the crest is coming, and it's high, so officials are trying to spread the workload by recruiting more volunteers. They must reinforce sandbag walls and levees before the wave hits.
We've almost got it beat. Let's don't get this far and quit now. Please come out and help us. There's a lot of good people put in a lot of good time and effort on this, and let's just don't let it end now.
Now, if you want to help, come to the Mark Twain Mall at I-70 and 5th Street in St. Charles. Also, the city of St. Charles has issued an evacuation order for the Sundermeyer Trailer Park and businesses and homes in that area. The river level is rising and is expected to top the levee in the next 24 to 36 hours. We're told electric service is also being cut. Dick, back to you.
Okay, Walter, thank you.
Ready for school. It's nearly August, and the start of class is just weeks away for many. But in St. Charles County, 80% of the Orchard Farm School District is underwater. Officials are working to come up with a solution before school starts.
And feverish work.
Now, railway officials are waiting to see what kind of help they're going to get from the federal government. Many small communities depend on the Gateway Western Railway for their only freight service. Meantime, in Missouri's capital, the Capitol building itself is high and dry. But that is not the case just a few blocks away. Parts of Jefferson City are flooded, as are some of the main roads, such as Highway 54. As we've been telling you, that Highway 54 bridge into Jefferson City is closed. On Saturday, the Missouri River is expected to crest at 37 or 38 feet in Jefferson City. That is at least 2 feet above yesterday's level and higher than the record 34 feet set back in 1951. Well, saving businesses in one of St. Louis
filed a lawsuit today to be allowed to get back into their areas. A judge rejected that request, ruling the city has the right to evacuate areas where a potential danger exists.
Anyone whose livelihood is on hold because of a waterlogged workplace. If you applied, a caseworker would ask you for ID, proof of residence, and how you were affected by the flood.
Did the caseworkers just go on the word of the applicant?
Yeah, this was food stamp by declaration, and we basically went on the word of the applicant.
So there was no, double check made that they were living in it?
Double check, no follow-up.
Most applicants were folks who suddenly found themselves in need, like Elbert Williams, who hasn't worked in 20 days, ever since his employer was flooded out.
They were just waiting on the river to get down enough where we can get in there and maybe start getting the cleanup going and getting some hours back in as far as that work.
But in the meantime, you just need that little help to tide you over.
Yes.
But John Lofton admits a lot of people unaffected by the flood applied for and got food stamps. He also admits a single person who'd be entitled to $111 worth of stamps could have claimed a family of 6 and been awarded $528 worth. Once the fraud cases started to pile up, caseworkers began making deeper bets.
Andy Murphy and Dick Ford back with you. All through our efforts to raise
$250, you can help by simply calling the toll-free number. That's what the National Telethon is all about. Money to help the American Red Cross and Salvation Army help our neighbors in need. Stay with us for Flood Aid, broadcast across America.
These are some of the remarkable stories that we'll remember long after the flood of '93. The helping hand reaching out to friends and family and total strangers.
It just was a sign of love, just love.
There about 6:30 on the evening of July 18th. Even their sandbag wall, the only one on the block, couldn't hold the floodwater back.
We're just sick. We've lived here since 1945, and I've never saw anything like this.
As John McKay watched water come around the side of the house, Alma McKay announced the basement was now taking on water. A steady trickle of water quickly filled the basement that still contained a furnace and a freezer. The light from our camera showed the true extent of the damage downstairs. Earlier in the afternoon, Congressman Richard Gephardt toured flooded South St. Louis neighborhoods, talking to those flooded out and listening to their complaints.
We drove as far as we could in the alley, and then we put on boots and walked to the house. Opened the back door, and the water met us.
These stairs lead to the McKay's basement. You can't see what's down there, but the McKays say it will cost thousands to replace their furnace, hot water heater, and furniture down there. And you can't even put a price on other personal items lost in the water, things the McKays spent a lifetime collecting. Kay Quinn, News Channel 5.
Providing food and shelter, but they're also getting ready to hand out these cleanup kits. It provides brooms and mops, this bucket, as well as cleaning supplies for residents for when they get back.
$3,020. Sending water gushing into town and residents fleeing for their lives.
All of a sudden she blew. I mean, a stream came out a quarter of a mile straight out, and it just ruptured.
As Coast Guard helicopters lowered crewmen in rescue baskets to perform farm-by-farm checks, Richard McConaughey made a dangerous escape in his VW bus.
We had water about that deep in the interior of the car coming through, and thank God the engine kept running.
The river was claiming not only their land, but part of their lives as well. While women and children waited nervously, the men on the island salvaged what heirlooms they could. Antiques were shuttled off the island by ferry. So were all of the residents. The river was rising fast. The next day, we returned to an island that was no more. Like an Atlantis, the island was covered by the murky Mississippi. Yet the fight for life continued. Hundreds of head of pigs had managed to swim and hang onto a roof of a barn. And it was up to a handful of residents to brave the waters in boats and save their livestock.
Quite a few pigs still swimming around out there, and they're trying to get on top of houses or sheds, whatever's sticking out of the ground yet.
Adversity sometimes brings out the best in people. Some who had lost everything were still willing to help others.
We're going around to people's houses and put their furniture and stuff upstairs and trying to get it out the windows and get it back over here to dry land.
For Carolyn Ritter, the flood has showed her that even underwater, home is where the heart is.
They're really friends. I just met them like 2 weeks ago when it all started, and they're like brothers and sisters now. We got really close.
The waters that took Kaskaskia from its people are unforgiving, unrelenting. But to residents who are still fighting to save their homes and their livelihoods, they are finding that while the river has taken their land, it has not overrun their hearts.
969. I like doing this part right here. I'll take...
Acres have been claimed by the water. Close to 20,000 people have been flooded out of their homes just here in Missouri. And the cost is tremendous and growing by the hour. Experts say this flood will cost all of us more than $10 billion. And the human toll is even more shocking. So far, more than 40 people have died in the flood of '93.
Old Man River playing the blues. You know, that's one thing we see out here every night on Night Beat. It's a different location, but we get to see the stories as they're happening, and you don't see the blues.
They say rising floodwater from the Missouri River threatens that vital link between St. Louis and Kansas City. Traffic is backed up for hours for a distance of 10 miles. High water is also interrupting rail traffic tonight near Glasgow, Missouri. 2 spans of a rail bridge collapsed about 100 miles east of Kansas City. The bridge was shut down 3 weeks ago because of high water, so no one was injured when it collapsed. Rail traffic will not be able to get through that town until the bridge is repaired.
A stretch of US 54 is open again tonight between Jefferson City and Kingdom City after being closed yesterday when a propane tank floated from its moorings. The tank was found floating in the Missouri River, and soon 16,000 gallons leaked from it. Accidents like that happen here as well. St. Louis emergency officials already have had to corral floating propane tanks.
We've had...
Luckily, before it did any damage. Well, the best way to keep more problems from occurring, of course, would be a drop in the river levels.
News Channel 5's Chief Meteorologist Bob Richards has the latest on the river flood level.
You live by the river at this point, you have to be able to accept what they've, come to tell you. You got to be able to pick up and move.
But moving again is making Linda Zimmerman and her family weary and angry.
Second time. We've been here 2.5 weeks, and this is the second time we're leaving, so a little frustrating.
Even as people began leaving, utility trucks rolled in to cut service.
They already shut the gas off, and they will be shutting off the electric tonight is what we've been told.
Just want to make sure none of those tanks start floating or anything like that if the water does get in there.
Businesses and homes around the trailer park were also warned, and like the others, Floyd Brower is facing the big dilemma. Should he stay or go? While some will stay in their homes, they risk getting in its way. Now, St. Charles County and City got some more help tonight. These 2 tractor-trailer trucks were drove in from Delaware by firefighters there. They're donating their equipment and time to help with the battle against the floods. Now, long before the evacuations tonight, city and county officials
continue to watch the flooding from here in the Satellite Center. But for now, that's it. Julius and Larry, back to you.
All right, Mary, thank you.
Criminal charges will not be filed.
There have been no flood. Well, all in all, the business owners down here are trying to stay in pretty good spirits, but they tell me it's pretty frustrating when they're sweating under the hot sun, lifting up the sandbags and building up this wall here, and people are standing there and watching them and taking pictures. Mandy?
Well, Rochelle, we see these sandbags. Do business owners feel safe with the sandbags, that they'll be okay once the river crests next week?
Yeah, they feel pretty safe. When the river crests, the water's going to be about right there, so they feel like they're pretty safe and that they're going to be pretty dry.
Okay, Rochelle, thank you.
From the park to his home. Dick?
Okay, Rocky, thank you.
And stable, and it continues to be watched for 24 hours each day, so no problems are expected. And the 2 benefit concerts on Saturday and Sunday are a go.
Back up. You're probably paying a little extra for it if it does, and you may have time to add it if you have escaped damage so far. More action on Wall Street today, pushing the Dow.
Again at the West Alton Elementary School. Floodwaters filled 2 of the building's 4 classrooms. But this is not the only problem for this school district.
There's no football squad here. Football players, cheerleaders.
There's not a lot to cheer about right now in the Orchard Farm School District in northern St. Charles County. 80% of the district is underwater. And now, rising floodwaters threaten the high school complex. For many students here, this flood has already taken their families home. Now, they want to be sure their home away from home, their high school, stays dry.
It's hard. It really is. And then it's kind of different coming up here and seeing your school almost underwater. I just want to go home.
Never flooded in this area before since like 1800. So nobody expected this when it came, and everybody's like, whoa, it's freaking everybody out.
Adding to the incentive to keep the high school dry is this brand new floor in the gym, built this summer at a cost of $50,000.
The future's kind of uncertain, but we will endure, and we will start school at this time on August 25th. At least that's our plans.
Of the day. And thanks to these images, thousands of you have opened up your hearts and your wallets to help out.
It's hard to say what it will cost the Red Cross to help return life to normal. One estimate is at least $15 to $20 million in the 9-state disaster region. And locally, not counting tonight's telethon, $2,183,000 have been raised as of today in the St. Louis area.
So this is a major levee break in Chesterfield, just south around Howell Island, just about a mile south of that Daniel Boone Bridge that we're looking at right now, and it has inundated very swiftly. A wall of water is the way Elliot described it earlier, just pouring into an area that is populated. There are businesses there. Spirit of St. Louis Airport is there. The Gumbo Correctional Institute is there. I mean, it is a major, potentially major catastrophe in West St. Louis County.
And this is just an incredible picture we're seeing right now. This is Highway 40.
Right.
This is a very busy highway.
It's an interstate highway.
Right, and there's water on both sides. I was out there earlier today, and it's just incredible what a difference just a few hours makes after this levee break. It's in the middle of what looks like a lake.
Yeah.
And one additional thing, too, as you look at these pictures and you see how this water is moving so quickly, you never know how long it's even going to be dry. The way this water is moving, an hour from now, or even less time, this highway could be underwater. So that's a possibility that officials are looking at now. So they got to get people off this highway. This is, as I said, a very dangerous situation.
From what we're told, the Missouri River has got plenty of water in it, and it hasn't reached its crest yet in this area. So that water is roaring down from the west, and it says it was rising at 1 inch an hour. And I believe Dave said earlier that was expected to continue.
There are still a few trucks at the very edge of the runway. You may be able to see their lights, and perhaps not. But when we first arrived, the water, it seemed as if the airport had a little bit of running room. However, that ended very quickly as the water is moving very quickly. And as you said, it is now on the runway and helicopters, making sure, one, that traffic is moving along, but two, making sure that no one is stranded. And that's the big effort by emergency crews right now.
Wisdom and support.
Of the Chesterfield Wall, which you can see right at the top of your screen at this point. It's very dry from that half mile from this floodwaters right here to the mall. You can see down below us, so the farmland is totally underwater. One of the landmarks out here, the smokehouse, is underwater. A Ford dealership also underwater. And you can see Highway 40 in this section totally submerged. You were saying the break came at the worst spot, and you can see why. It is just coming over into this area. It keeps moving. The river is moving very fast, going right over the roads. You can see in some areas just over on 40 in the westbound lanes, that water just rushing over it. Pieces of debris just being blown from one spot to another. Again, 40 east and westbound closed in this area. The floodwaters go all the way up, and the mall is protected by about a half mile of land at this point where it's still dry. We don't know how far this water is going to continue moving, though, at this point. Larry?
All right, well, Heidi, as I check a map, the only...
And I'm imagining at this point they're just trying to save what may be inside. We're trying to find that area right now, but as you can see below us, a view of the area right around 40, the Chesterfield Parkway, right near the Spirit of St. Louis Airport, to give you all an idea of exactly where we are. And you can see just how high the water is rising on some buildings. It's halfway up. This one storage facility, the beige one we're passing, you can see how high the water is there. Other businesses, it's just devastating. And we're coming up on the airport right now, and looks like there are at least 8 planes down here. Yesterday, you recall, officials tried to get people to evacuate this area, to move out. People were coming down to get their aircraft. Obviously, for some reason, maybe the planes were having mechanical problems, maybe the people just were out of town and are unaware of the situation. Who knows what the situation is, but right now you can see all those planes in jeopardy. The smaller ones are underwater, the larger ones are still hanging on above water as much as they possibly can at this point, but we don't know how much more this water is going to rise. There have been some reports that in some areas it's as much as 4 feet deep. You know, that has not been confirmed yet. It could be lower in some areas, it could be higher in others. And again, we're trying to find a location where we understand there are reports at this point that some people are out just trying to sandbag what they can around a business. We haven't seen anything yet. But right now, just circling over the area, you could see the absolute destruction. Cars underwater, trucks underwater. I saw a phone company truck that was underwater before. You could see the planes over here. The runway to this airport is completely submerged. The only way you could tell there's a runway over here is that's the clearing in the area, and that's completely underwater. You said, again, this was the worst possible area for it to flood, and this is the reason why. You see how much damage there is right now. Larry, back to you. Larry, you can see the tower right now. That's above water, as you can see. That's doing okay, but you can see some of the trucks down in front of Executive Beechcraft, half underwater there, different hangars, half underwater, and in and around the area, again, you see all those planes that are still here. And you were talking about some of those slicks. We're not exactly sure what some of this stuff is down here. What we do know is that the river is moving real fast, and a lot of debris, some of the logs and so forth that have been stuck in trees are now moving into the area and just jamming up against some of the businesses. Some of the businesses tried to put sandbags out yesterday. In this area, you can see the folks really just did not have time. Their main goal yesterday was to get their belongings and get out during that evacuation. We're told it affected about 500 businesses, about 50 farms out here affected by this flood, this levee break. Again, it was a 100-foot chunk of a levee that just blew out. The Missouri River now is just pouring into this area. That blew out about 10:40 last night, and the water continues to gush in this area. We're coming on to more businesses down here, and you see some tractor trailers that are underwater, and you see some of the debris just all jamming together around trees and on higher ground here. We saw earlier some of the people tried to move their cars and trucks to the bridges in the area in order to save them. A lot of people couldn't do that. And again, we're not sure just how deep the water is. We heard reports that it's 4 feet deep in some areas. It could be higher. It could be lower in other areas. It's just fairly devastating. Larry, back to you.
All right, 55, obviously for good reason. The Gumbo Prison also there at Chesterfield in that Chesterfield Valley. She mentioned the smokehouse, which a lot of folks would know and recognize. As we saw it briefly, it was also inundated. Again, it is amazing when you stop and think about it. If you've ever driven along that section, Interstate 40 is basically underwater, and the only thing showing along the highway are the bridges where we saw some cars. Now, if we can check in, Heidi, I believe you should be right over the top of Gumbo Prison and get a better look at that facility now.
Okay, I think you see this area right now. You can see why they evacuated everyone yesterday, because it's getting pretty devastated out here. I'm not sure if you have a better shot of it right now. I believe we do. Okay, you can see the fence around the whole prison. There are parts of the area that are completely underwater. The prison itself, the water looks like it is definitely surrounding all the buildings over there. Some areas looks like it's up pretty high. Again, we don't know the exact depth of this water. Again, we heard that in some areas it's up to 4 feet deep. But again, you can see why they evacuated everyone. We understand up to 500 prisoners were evacuated from here yesterday. And this is the reason why they didn't want to have to try to deal with this last night or today, because there could have been some injuries had they had to really rush people out of here. So they really evacuated people at a good time. You can see, again, all the debris is just rushing into areas and jamming up at the edges of the fences and so forth. Different fields here completely underwater. Again, we're trying to get closer to the actual facility so you can see the different sections and just how high up this water is. It's the only way to describe it, Larry. It's truly a mess out here.
They are amazing pictures. All right, thank you, Heidi and Brian Howell, and your chopper water spots here and there. Businesses thriving yesterday, and everyone maybe anticipating a little water, but nothing like this until the Monarch levee gave way about 10:40 last night. Now, as we continue to monitor that situation, we also continue to watch the situation in South St. Louis, as we pointed out, that remains under a state of emergency because of those propane tanks, 23 of them that are threatening to break loose from some of their moorings entirely. That means actually their filler lines are the only thing basically holding them in place, and if one or more of them break loose and they are going to be free to go south in the river, and that of course creates a very volatile situation. And I'm not too sure that it's not a volatile situation in some areas around the Chesterfield Valley area right now with apparently all those slicks across the water. When you get that kind of aviation gas and jet fuel mixing in what appears to be jet fuel and aviation gas from the airport facility, it wouldn't take much to start a fire across the top of that water. Again, you're advised to stay out of the area. They are asking for help if you have some flat-bottom boats with motors and you can help in any search rescue. You may then go to the Chesterfield Mall at the Dillard side, I believe, and then they will direct you how you can be of some use. There is no need to report for any sandbagging in that area. There is nothing left to sandbag. Yesterday, such futile, vain efforts, as I watched around Chesterfield Bank, as a matter of fact, employees had gathered and were beginning to put up sandbags, maybe 4 feet high, and plastic. I don't think that would have held after what happened last night, but we couldn't see exactly how high the water was. Again, we were told it's 4 feet deep easily in some areas. Whether or not it's beginning to level out, it's hard to say, but again, the water is continuing to come in. Remember, all of this is from the Missouri as the crest moves this direction from Roseport and Columbia. We have something else, Billy? Steve Jankowski is ready once again in River de Pere area. Let's check in now with Steve.
Okay, Larry, once again, the situation remains very much the same. The evacuation order and the state of emergency in effect in this several block area of South St. Louis. And again, as you see, the pictures behind me being repeated over and over again. The cars pulling up to this police barricade here at Broadway and Pepping. It's being repeated at various barricades throughout this numerous block area. As people try to come in here, they say, I'd like to get to my workplace. I'd like to check into my house, just see if everything's okay. And at this point, the answer is no, a definitive no, because the officers at this point are being told they have to protect this area because of the danger, the potential danger, at least at this point, from the 23 propane tanks who are still, again, floating loose from with their feeding tubes. They are away from their moorings. They're floating in the floodwaters, but at this point, the feeding tubes are still attached, and that's what's keeping those things in check. And again, there is a dive underway at this point, from what we understand, to see if there's any other way that they can either put more weight on top of them to get them back onto their moorings, or somehow attach them more to the riverbed or to the bed of whatever the floodwaters are on top, so that those tanks don't float anymore. And again, that's the process that we're hoping to find out a little bit more about very shortly. And again, all the way up and down these streets, we're on the north boundary of this particular area that's been evacuated. And again, there are people sitting down. You might even be able to see the little boy, my photographer, Nam Furman, if you can pan down. There's a little boy sitting next to the automobile down here in a red station wagon, and these families want to get back into their house. In fact, that's the family that was evacuated early this morning, who apparently was told and told us that no one came and knocked on their door. They came back here early this morning. They've been parked right across the street from their house for about the past hour and a half or so, just wanting to get back into their house. And as I mentioned, up the street, there are people who are keeping an all-night vigil waiting for this situation to ease. And at this point, there is no end in sight, and we just have to keep letting everybody know the evacuation order, the emergency notification, still in effect until further notice. And as soon as we find out any other information, we'll make that available to you. 23 propane tanks, 30,000 gallons of liquid propane in each, still floating loose. And that's the danger and the potential danger. A leak could create a gas cloud. Ignition, of course, could create a monumental explosion, and that's what officials are trying to prevent right now. And Larry, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Steve. And let me clarify something Steve just said. He made the same misstatement I did, that folks might get the wrong idea when we said the tanks are floating loose. We do not mean they're actually floating free in the Mississippi. They are still tied, excuse me, as he also pointed out, by their feeder lines. But they are buoyant, they are moving, they are swaying with the current. And if they break loose from any of these mooring, these feeder lines, then that's when you really have the problem begin to exist. Now, there's a real concern about...
Larry, right now we're just west of the Chesterfield Parkway. You can see there's a slick sheen over the water in some of the area. I see two people walking down there through what looks like some type of fuel spill. I'm not certain what company that is down there. There are a lot of tractor trailers. I don't know where the fuel is coming from. But as Dr. Brian Howe looks in the area, you can see there is definitely some kind of fuel spill here. A couple of people walking up through there. And if you looked just above the screen, you can see there are some people, apparently some residents, who live right at the edge of the flood, surveying the area. We also saw a county police helicopter out. They were surveying the area, and they just landed, so I'm sure they're going to compile their information and see just what they're going to do out here. Again, Larry, we can see some type of fuel spill in this one area. We're not sure what kind of company it is, where the fuel is coming from. I'm sure the county police saw this when they were flying overhead. Back to you, Larry.
All right, Heidi, I think I can hear you and you can hear me at the same time now. We want to re-stress that Highway 40 obviously is closed. Exactly. This is an amazing scene, Heidi.
It's incredible, and again, you can see the one remaining piece of road in this area. There are a few people walking along. It would appear to me that they live in the houses nearby, and I'm telling you, the water is getting closer to those homes, and so is this fuel spill. You can see it's just moving in this industrial area, and it's a pretty long slit, whatever it is down there. Right now it seems to be holding right at the edge of the water, and if this water continues to move closer to those homes, that slick, whatever it is going to be moving with the water, and you can see how close it is to those homes down there. I'm not sure how close Brian can get in, but as we circle over the area, you will see where the homes are. You can also see some of the people. Not a good idea. They're walking through this water, which is bad enough, and they're walking through with some type of fuel spill on there. I don't know if they just can't see it from that level, but it is a dangerous situation. People should not be walking in this water. Anyone will tell you that. And then when you have some kind of fuel spill on top of it, it's even more dangerous. You can see the road right in front of these homes is dry right now, but the water is inching closer to it. And we're not sure just how fast it's moving and if it's going to be coming in this area, but it certainly looks like it will be moving closer to this area. I see some people, it looks like they were packing up their trucks this morning, maybe the same people who you see down there right now. And again, we can only stress to people who are remaining in this area, you need to get out. The county police have been telling us that if you live in this area and you haven't evacuated yet, you should do so immediately. No one knows just how high or how far this water is going to go. And you can see right down here, we're again over on 40. There's one man who's walking right up to the edge of the water. There's another person on the bridge. It's dangerous out here. You can see the pictures and just see how bad it is. You know, police are warning people, please stay away from this area. It's very dangerous. Larry?
Heidi, I would have to assume and hope that some of those are emergency personnel, because you're right, civilians should not be in there at this time. The situation can change dramatically as we watch some of this. The best I can tell, I was trying to check a map while you're doing that, that might be along near, pardon me, Chesterfield Airport Road and Long Road, and perhaps another road known as Valley Center. It's very difficult to tell. Chesterfield Park or Airport Road actually runs parallel to Highway 40. In fact, it is the old Highway 40. Heidi?
Yeah, it's very hard to tell right now because so many of these roads are out. You know, to give you the one main landmark we keep pointing out is the smokehouse. A lot of people know it. There's also a tech company out here and a large storage facility. All of that is underwater. I see one truck pulling up to the area now. They may try to sandbag, but I'll tell you, Larry, it looks like most of the people down here right now are residents who are coming out of their homes. They may have somehow gotten into the area or didn't leave the area yesterday and are packing up. But emergency crews are on the outlying area just telling people not to come into this area. And again, there's one truck that's just starting to pull up. I don't know if you can see it right on 40 westbound lane, trying to, we assume maybe bringing in some sandbags to lay some of those sandbags down in order to hold off that water, which continues to move into the area. Larry, back to you.
Heidi, I also know near the smokehouse there is a pet lodging, a pet groomer, also a vet, and a lodging. We've been told that in that facility there are probably pets that are hopefully on the upper level, obviously, that they were put up there just for safety, but now someone apparently is going to have to go back in, make sure they're cared for properly. I don't know if, I can't quite tell from this position if that's what you've got in the scene or not, but as we continue to watch this, as the camera widens out the next time, look, folks, I think you're basically seeing to the east, the water continues to move east and, of course, to the north. That's a great shot, Brian. I can see by the sun, I assume you're definitely shooting east at this point of the bend as it comes around near the smokehouse. Is that correct, Heidi?
Yeah, that's correct. And you were referring to that pet place. You can see right in front of that, those long white buildings, that's a storage facility. Right in front of that brown building, that's the building I was pointing out to you before. And you can see the water looks like it's halfway up the back of the building, about a third of the way up the front of the building. I'm not sure if that was the building you were referring to. I pointed out that I saw something that said pet on the front of it.
Yes, I believe that's it. And again, that shot, wide shot, was showing you just how far the river is stretching out. again, at that point, once it crosses 40, it then rejoins the Missouri River on the other side, where there was farmland and dry land yesterday, except for some puddles of water. Heidi, we're going to cut away from you briefly as you continue to survey that area, because we have Steve Jankowski again back in South St. Louis, and your mouth that you didn't say, but I definitely got the impression from you that Alton, Illinois residents were almost in panic last night as they saw the water beginning to come higher than ever.
Well, Larry, down in the Piasaw Business District, down in the downtown area, yes, there was. In fact, there was a struggle, as you and I both used a term last night, a battle literally going on, as the floodwaters were filling a very, very large sewer main under Piasaw Street. That flood surge, the water against the sandbags as well as the water surging into the sewer line was coming up through the street, in fact, exploding through the street. There were sidewalks buckling, the water was coming up, and they were putting the large concrete barriers that we see throughout the construction zones on Highway 40 and 70 on top, dumping tons of rock and sand literally to hold the street down as the water was exploding through the pavement. And I tell you, I know that the people in the downtown business area, since I live in the Alton area, have struggled for the last 3 weeks valiantly to keep that water out. They have a large sandbag wall along down, I guess it would really be near Piasaw Street and down along Broadway to keep the floodwaters out near the ConAgra plant. But when that started to come through, the pump started to crank, and the people were really struggling against that. And we may have some video from that from last night. As you see, the jets from some of the pumps that were spraying that water out from behind the sandbags as people worked feverishly to get that water out of there. And again, the effort was hectic, and I would have to say panic. There were people moving and climbing over. You see the picture here, these people pulling the hose across, climbing over the concrete barriers, the sandbags that were rapidly being brought in by the front end loader. And again, it was a very, very risky situation because of the danger from the constant flow of water coming up through the street, the sidewalks buckling, and again, they're facing 2 more tough days. The original flood crest in Alton was supposed to be 41 feet. Now they're saying 42 plus. One of the other things I know they're concerned about, I talked to Mayor Bob Towse last night when I was in town, and he said they have a literal fortress built around the water plant, which is completely isolated. It's almost like a moat in reverse. The wall is built to 43 feet. They say they can handle to 43 feet. The flood crest now is expected at 42 feet there on Monday. It may go slightly higher, and they're hoping that they don't lose the water plant. But Larry, good observation. And again, it was almost a panic situation, at least in that downtown part last night.
All right, Steve, we're moving the Jet Copter 4 now to your area to give us an aerial look at those tanks. So if you'll stand by, you can help narrate that once the chopper gets there in that position.
Well, one thing I might mention, Larry, yes. Quickly, we've seen a couple of truckloads of people from Phillips Petroleum come into the area this morning, within the past 15 minutes, in fact. 2 truckloads with Texas plates drove in. They have been allowed to go into the area near the tanks, which are about 6 blocks just to the south of us here along Broadway. And so at this point, inspection teams from Phillips Petroleum are on the scene, and apparently they're checking it right now, possibly with those divers who have also investigating to see if there's any way they can either shore up the tie lines that are holding them slightly in place, as well as the feeding line, or if there's any way that more weight can be added to the top of them to get them settled on their moorings. And we'll try to get you posted on that as soon as we know.